right. What's going on, everybody? We're going to get cranking in about 1 to 2 minutes. We want to launch it, let everybody kind of get in, get settled. Go ahead and leave your comments now. We'll get to you in a minute. So just give us a little bit of a breather here. And once Nick gets back in,
gives me a chance to show this off, Keith.
Oh, dear God. Dear God. All right. About ready to go. We'll wait about another 15 seconds and then we'll be ready to rock. Hope everybody had a good weekend, good, safe weekend.
Look at this. Chris, I saw you this morning too. I just didn't see you at Gator Walk. Definitely would have said what's up if I had seen you.
We're going to start off in just a minute. All right, Nick, you ready to roll?
Ready.
All right. What's going on, everybody? Keith Niebuhr and Nick Torre of Gators Online. And this is Talking Gators. We're going to break down Saturday's big win, the best we can. We're not exactly football savants here, but we're going to break it down. Florida won 41-39 in Columbia, South Carolina. I don't want to say Columbia, South Carolina has been a house of horrors, but being away from home has been a house of horrors for the Gators in the last few seasons. So big win for Florida, 41-39. The Gators now 5-2 overall, 3-1 in the SEC. So many big performances in that game, Nick. So many big plays that if any one of them aren't made, Florida may not walk out of there with a win. What were your just initial takeaways from the significance of Florida's big win Saturday in Columbia?
I think I'll do 30,000 feet first. I've mentioned. I mean, Zach wrote a story this week about Florida has had 11 true freshmen play in every single game this year. And that number would be 12 if Trey Wilson hadn't gotten hurt. So it's a young team. And I've said, listen, I think we all knew there were going to be lumps and there were going to be growing pains. That doesn't make the lumps and the growing pains feel better in the moment. Like it didn't make, knowing that you're going to be a young team and you might stumble doesn't make losing to Kentucky feel better. But I think what this team is learning to do, and Billy Napier too, they're learning how to win. And I can go back to the Tennessee game where I thought that first half game plan and execution of the game plan was fantastic. But then the second half, Billy Napier even admitted to us, I probably got too conservative. And Florida's still learning how to win. I think what we saw Saturday is Florida goes down, scores, immediately gives up a touchdown. They get punched in the face. When they got punched in the face at Utah, they didn't respond. When they got punched in the face at Kentucky, they didn't respond. Florida was down 10 points in the fourth quarter. And I'm sitting up in the press box thinking this game's cash. This game is on ice. I don't think they come back and score 10. So to me, if I'm looking at it from 30,000 feet, this is a young football team who now is learning how to handle adversity when they don't have 90,000 people in orange and blue cheering them on. They're learning how to handle adversity on the road. Williams-Brice isn't like Death Valley. It's not Bryant-Denny, but that's a really good environment. I've always been impressed with that stadium and the environment there. So to me, the biggest takeaway is it's a really young football team. If you think about it and you look at it, you're probably losing Princely and Ricky from guys that are contributing. So you're bringing all these guys back. And right now, I think they're learning how to win and handle adversity on the road, which we hadn't seen them do yet. And then there's a bunch of individual performances that we'll get into. But to me, that's the most important thing that I took away from the game.
Nick, this movie came out before you were born, but it's called Coming to America. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Fantastic movie.
Fairly big movie. And there's a line in the movie where Eddie Murphy's character, Prince Hakeem, says, "He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb. One cannot fly into flying." That's Nietzsche. Okay. It's true. There is some truth to that. And occasionally there's a team here or there that'll go from 4-8 to 12. And I mean, it happens. You have these huge turnarounds, but generally it's a step thing. It's a first you lose big, then you lose close, then you win close, then you win big. I think it was Bobby Bowden of all people who once said that. So I think there is some truth to that. Let's get to a couple comments first, and then we'll get back into the game itself. Jim Martin says, "Did Billy Napier have a press conference today?" Nick, I'll let you explain.
No media this week other than the SEC teleconference on Wednesday. And I will tell you, we get questions all the time, what the hell is the media asking these questions for on Wednesday? And I'm like, it's a national conference. I would expect more local guys hitting pound zero to get our questions in, since we only get one opportunity to talk to them this week. So
if there's no press conference, say, what are the coaches doing? You may ask. Well, 5 of them were out on the road recruiting today. Who were they? Well, we already know of a couple of them. One in particular, Billy Gonzalez, who went to Tampa Catholic to check on some guys, including wide receiver TJ Moore, who's committed to Clemson. Tough go flipping him. And then also defensive back Jameer Grimsley at the same school is committed to Alabama. Pardon me, but still talking a lot to Florida. So they're out on the road. There is a situation. Florida's one of those schools, for everybody that knows, why don't I just tell you everywhere they went and who went and where? They would prefer a lot of that stuff to knock it out. Not always. Sometimes they could care less. But this is one of those weeks where they kind of want to do things sort of undercover. If we write about it, you'll know that it's okay to put it out there. We're not going to jeopardize anything they're doing. That's not our first order of business. I mean, we have a business to run just like they do. But in a situation like that, there's some give and take. The reporters that cover the Pentagon and the White House, Nick, there's give and take there too. We'll give you something here if you do us a solid here. We'll do a solid. That's how it works. It's relationship building when you're a reporter. Yeah. But just know that coaches are out recruiting in full force today. Okay, today. So let's see if there's any more comments. Well, we actually have a lot of comments, but let's see. I want to know why Zach didn't give me a high five at the Gator walk-in. Columbia. Boy, that Zach is some kind of raging. No, I'm kidding. He probably was busy, Chris. But Nick, maybe you got something to add here?
Yeah. I just didn't see Chris. I see Chris in every single live show we do. Definitely know that that like suit T-shirt that he's got in his picture there. If I would have seen you and recognized you, Chris, I would have come up to you for sure.
I'm just laughing at some of the comments here. Some people wanted to know where you were, Nick, that first opening few seconds.
Yeah. Don't put that one up on the screen.
No. I'm trying to keep this thing going here. All right. So, Nick, when I went back and looked at the stats, I mean, Florida had almost 500 yards of offense in this game and obviously lost some yards on that last drive to run the clock down. Graham Mertz, 30 of 48, 423 yards, 3 touchdowns. His lowest completion percentage of any game he started at Florida of the 7. I would contend that was his best game, though. Nick, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, numbers wise, yes. I think he still missed on some throws that he should have had. But like it's hard to look at 30 completions, 3 touchdowns, and four and change and be like, he didn't play well. He clearly played well. I think that if he goes back, he'll look and say, hey, there's some balls that I should have hit. It might have been like 35 for 40. Or 48.
Nick, you got guys coming at you from different angles. You got, there's a million things going on in the game. He made the plays when they counted, though. Would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I was telling Zach, Zach was like, man, he was great on that last drive. I was like, he was 3 of 7 on the last drive. And one of those 3 probably should have been picked off because it was so poorly thrown to Ricky, but we get an immaculate reception. The touchdown pass, and Zach wrote a really good feature on that today because Graham Mertz had mentioned missing that throw, that same slot seam, missing it in a very similar situation, almost the exact same time, actually, years ago against Penn State when he was at Wisconsin. The way that, so I don't know I can't remember who was up top. They ran a slant and go, and he pump fakes it way before the guy in the slant is even in his break, and it's because the pump fake wasn't for the receiver. The pump fake was for the single high safety who completely bid on it. That gives you a little window to throw. Arliss Boardingham gets beat. You've got a defensive end barreling down your throat, and then all of a sudden you just rip it, knowing you're going to get hit, and he ripped a dime to Ricky. So, game on the line, 2nd and 15 there. He made probably the throw of his career. But I think Graham, more so than anything, I've been impressed with just the way that he leads. And this guy gets hit. I don't know what the exact number is, Keith, but this guy gets hit hard a lot during games. And every time he gets up, and sometimes it's slower than others, I think that goes a long way in the locker room. Like when quarterbacks run or, lower their shoulder instead of just running out of bounds, that gets the team fired up. I think what we've seen from Graham Mertz, and I go back to that Tennessee game, I don't know that that Anthony Richardson's offensive linemen are, putting boxing gloves on at the end of the game if he gets hit the way Graham was hit at the end of that Tennessee game. And I think it goes to show just the investment that he put in. His teammates saw that. I think Graham Mertz has been way more than I expected he would be. So I need to go on record and give Graham his flowers. Listen, I think he has been a game manager, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being a game manager. I questioned with 2 and change left on Saturday night, can Graham Mertz go and win a game with his arm? If you're a defensive coordinator, that's how you want to beat Florida. Hey, make Graham Mertz beat us with his arm. Well, now you have it on tape that he can do that.
Well, Nick, it's funny that you mentioned the hits he's taken, because I don't think there was anybody who played that quarterback position at Florida in the last 35 years that took more hits than Danny Werfel. And it was Danny Werfel's throw to Chris Doering that so many people were reminded of, with this late connection to go ahead between Graham Mertz and Ricky Pearsall. Very similar looking plays. I tweeted it out yesterday, the 2 plays on top of each other. And then the Florida football team did the same thing today. Danny would sit back there.
Idea, Keith.
Well, no, I think a lot of people saw what I saw. And the funny thing is that Danny took a lot of hits, but in taking those hits, that extra second or two, split second or two in the pocket, gave his receivers just that a little bit extra time to get, away from their defensive backs. A couple other things I want to make note of. People were kind of critical of Graham's deep ball throws. Somebody called me up, one of my college roommates said, hey, he was underthrowing a lot of those. Well, you know who else underthrew some of those in his career? Guy named Shane Matthews, and it was intentional. And if you go through the dialogue at the end of the game, we have access to the the media interviews. I believe Graham Mertz alluded to the fact that at least one of those throws was a throw that you throw short. And I think he was talking about intentionally the 4th and 10 completion to 26 yards to Ricky Pearsall. So sometimes when a guy doesn't throw it long and over everybody's head, that's by design. I think Graham Mertz is a very smart player. I think he's a very heady player, Nick. Those clutch throws, though, I don't think there was any bigger play. I mean, we're talking about the touchdown, but how about that 4th and 10 completion to Ricky Pearsall where he threw it, where maybe that might have been the only place where it's a completion?
What a catch by Ricky, looking like Willie Mays out in center field at the Polo Grounds. I think what we're seeing with Florida is Graham is. It's interesting. Now you're in the back half of the schedule, and we had Andy Staples on the show this morning, and he's saying, hey, you might have to get into shootouts to beat Georgia, to beat maybe even Arkansas, certainly to beat LSU. You're going to have to LSU is going to score 30 on this defense at home, at minimum. Jaden Daniels is having like a Heisman type season. So you're going to have to get into shootouts. And I was looking at it before and thinking, man, does Florida use a similar game plan to Tennessee where you just like hope that you can get, long extended drives, 8 to 12 play drives, chew up clock, limit possessions? And Andy was like, I think we see that with the emergence of Trey Wilson, with the emergence of Arliss Boardingham, Hayden Hansen to a degree as well. Florida might have found something with some playmakers and opened up a new some new depth into the playbook, and maybe you can go and try to outscore Missouri and Columbia or outscore LSU and Baton Rouge.
Nick, it seems like we're seeing an evolution of the offense, and when you do one thing well, it can help the other thing. So Florida ran the ball fairly well at times this season. Maybe that opened up the passing game. Then you have young players emerge, tight ends, receivers. Well, now what can this do for the running game? We'll see. Nick, here's an interesting question. This has been floating around. Did Billy Napier give up play calling to Russ Callaway? Let's just put it out there. What do you hear? What do you know?
No, I think Russ is having input, but Billy's calling plays. So save your tinfoil. Don't put it on your head. You can use it to cook or do something else. Speaking of tinfoil hats, this guy says you need a new hat. I do. I have a hat coming. You'll see it on Monday, Harrison. I have a new hat coming. But this is a sponsor.
We need more Trey Wilson in the backfield. Here's Trey Wilson's stats from the other day: 6 catches for 83 yards. Another great game. One of the 7 true freshmen of the week for On3 nationally. 25 catches this season, for 250 yards right in that area. And he's got some good rushes. He's got another, half 100 rushing yards. He does a little bit of everything. He runs, gets yards after contact. He runs through contact. He can escape people. You look like you've got him corralled in the middle of the field, Nick, and he gets you an extra 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yards. And when you're an offense fighting for yards, fighting on every possession because they haven't had any big play potential, really, not with any consistency, that's really been just a godsend to the Florida offense. But Trey Wilson, another big game. And the other freshman you mentioned, or one of the other ones, Arliss Boardingham, a tight end, redshirt freshman, 5 catches for 55 yards, back-to-back big games for him.
He leads the team in touchdown catches.
Incredible. You talk to college coaches across the land, and they will tell you that the tight end position, having receiving tight ends that can do things, just changes everything in your offense. It's really become, it went from kind of an afterthought position for many, many years to being one of the single most important positions on the field. And then Trey Smack, I know you love kickers, Nick, another big game, 4 clutch kicks. The defense, though, gave up a lot of yards. We're going to get back to some of these other stats, Nick. And, people don't want you to be negative when you lose or when the team wins. But, South Carolina, 23 first downs, 465 yards total, 313 through the air. Now, Spencer Rattler is, I don't know, statistics against him are going to be different than a lot of guys. He keeps so many plays alive. He's a unique talent, I think. And I think that's always going to make that team difficult to defend when he's out there. But, Nick, the defense did make plays those last couple drives. Look, I mean, you're not going to stop the other team every time, right?
Yeah.
But when it counted, they came up big the other day. Can they build off that? Or is the fact that they're now they've had a few rough games in the last 3 weeks. I'd say 2 of the last 3 games have been not their best. How much of a concern is it? You tell me.
Yeah, again, I think before talking to Andy today, I was like, they've had 2 bad games. They had a bad game against Kentucky, missed 19 tackles. Like, that's not who they are. But then they had a bad game this week, and they had 11 missed tackles. And it's like, all right, well, when they play better competition, they're having missed tackles and not run fitting and some stuff like that. Listen, Austin Armstrong's defense is going to give up big plays. Like, it's just going to happen. Like, they play single high safety. They ask their corners to play man coverage. You're going to give up some big plays. What I thought Florida had been doing really well was playing up front, whether it was Cam and Caleb or McClellan and Dez or Tyreek Sapp, rotating those guys. I thought, hey, they're getting something up front. They're letting the linebackers play clean. So to me, I think I need to see more from the defensive line, especially coming up after this bye week. It's a tough task against Georgia. I need Cam Jackson to have his best game. I need Caleb Banks to have his best game. You need to play better up front, I think, because it's all tied together too, Keith. I mean, like if you're giving Spencer Rattler 8 seconds to throw, Jalen Kimber's going to get beat. It's hard to cover a guy for 8 seconds.
Chris asked, you guys believe, and you guys being you cover the team. I'm just a little fanboy from the side watching, but do you guys believe the tight end emergence, along with Eugene Wilson's emergence, are helping Ricky Pearsall? Actually, I'm trying to figure out this question. Has that unlocked something with Ricky Pearsall? A sense of belief with the team? I don't, how about the emergence of those guys? What's that doing for the offense? What's it doing for Ricky Pearsall?
It's not a sense of belief. You have to worry about somebody else other than Ricky Pearsall. Like when Trey Wilson was out, and before Arliss Boardingham was getting any run, who are you worrying about on Florida's offense? Maybe the running back and Ricky Pearsall. That's it. So now when you have Arliss Boardingham, a guy who you can throw into the flat, big guy, 6'3", 240, 235, tough to bring down. Okay, well, they got him the ball in space. We have to worry about him. This Eugene Wilson character has run 3.5 ultra marathons in pre-snap motion. We have to know where 3 is when he's on the field. So it just takes away eyes from Ricky Pearsall. If you remember when Kyle Pitts was hurt, Kadarius Toney didn't have great games. Why? Because, well, now you can focus on Kadarius Toney. I'm talking about that 2020 season. When you had Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney on the field, it's like, hey, pick one to try to slow down, and then the other one kills you. So I don't think it's a belief. Like, listen, all these guys in that locker room believe. There's a ton of belief in that locker room. I think it's just you can't just key on Ricky Pearsall.
Patrick's putting up the quote, basically, essentially the gist of the quote that I was referring to earlier. Graham Mertz said that the Ricky Pearsall bomb was intentionally short because the corner was further down the field. I mean, these are split-second decisions, though. I mean, I don't know if you can tell from the 20-yard line, let's say, how much separation a guy has from a receiver at the 50. It's all happening so fast. But the short throw, the comebacker is your receiver knows it's coming. The other guy doesn't know whether it's going over or top. I mean, the other guy's going to probably assume it's going to go long or inside or toward the hash. That's 3 options. but the fourth one's coming back.
Yeah.
Now there's comeback routes. Those are like 10-yard routes. I mean, you don't usually go down that far. So it's interesting. It worked. It worked. And again, Shane Matthews had a lot of success with that in the early 90s. So Nick, 5-2, 3-1, everybody's excited, but now you're really hitting the teeth of the schedule. And the bye week does seem to be coming at a perfect time, right? You've got some momentum. Yeah, give me a few reasons why Florida needed the bye week right now, other than the fact that Georgia's also got a bye week this week and they play next week. Give me some reasons. Why is this beneficial for Florida?
Trevor Etienne's dealing with a shoulder injury. You could see him at South Carolina. Obviously, he missed the Vanderbilt game, but you can see him at South Carolina unless he absolutely had to take a hit because he was running between the tackles. Like he wasn't trying to get hit. I think I don't know what's up with Devin Moore. I'm seeing a ton of questions about Devin Moore. He had been sick. He has been hurt pretty much his entire time here. Also, like Jalen Kimber's not playing bad. Like Jalen Kimber, the problem with Jalen Kimber is Kimber's mistakes are like catastrophic mistakes. He'll miss a tackle that goes for a touchdown. He'll get beat for a 60-yard play. He had a touchdown saving tackle. I think it would have been a completely different game if he doesn't make a tackle in space in the red zone. It goes for 7. That's a totally different game. We're probably having a totally different conversation. I think maybe Kimber, as a corner, you have to be like Chauncey Gardner. You have to think that you've never made a mistake. You're the best corner to ever play the game. And when you do get beat, you've forgotten about it before you even get up off the grass. I think maybe Kimber, with some of the tentativeness I'm seeing with him in the air when balls are in the air, maybe he's just thinking about getting beat, and you can't have that mentality. But he has not been as bad as I think a lot of the fans talk about him as, because when he does make the mistake, like I said, it just seems to be catastrophic. He's not making little mistakes.
Here's a comment. Sorry, Nick.
Go ahead. He is the second highest rated guy in pass coverage for Florida this year, with Devin Moore being the highest.
Here's a comment. The fact that Florida showed it can throw deep can only open up the running back game. Feed Etienne and Montrell. It's not just going to open that up. I mean, look, we don't know what the future holds. Georgia's a Kentucky blasted Florida and then got blasted by Georgia the next week. We don't know what the future holds, but theoretically, by now giving the defense even more things to focus on, it's now all of a sudden the defense is back and you can throw more swing passes. Remember those all those running back swing passes that we used to see in the 1980s? Nick, you weren't around. FSU did it a lot in the 1990s. Maybe those return. Okay. Florida tried a couple of them the other day. I remember one of them that Montrell Johnson didn't catch. He was probably going to get swallowed up even if he did. But now with some increased plays downfield, there's probably going to be less attention that you can pay to him on those plays. So you give the defense a lot more to think about. They're still 20, 21, 22-year-old guys. And the more they have to process, the more mistakes it's going to lead to. Jimbo Fisher, before he played the national championship one year, was kind of bemoaning the fact that the other team just gave you so much eye candy. So their offense, the other team's offense, had so many things going on, things guys going in motion, all this stuff pre-snap. And now Florida was already doing that. Now you throw in the extra thing, which is, hey, they've shown now that they can throw the ball effectively, not only on the 2-yard pass, but the 12-yard pass and the 22-yard pass. So yes, it does change things. It does change things. Let's see. Somebody says, don't forget Khalil Jackson.
Dude, he's made some of the, obviously Ricky's got that touchdown was probably the catch of his career, just because of it being almost a walk-off. The one-handed catch, he had that over-the-shoulder catch, but like Khalil Jackson had that toe touch catch. I can't remember which game it was. That was nasty on the sideline. That dude he's like the kid in Little Giants with the stickum on his hands. Like if the ball comes near him, he's catching it. And I think Graham threw that pass flat because there was a safety up top. So like Khalil did a great job. The pass was not thrown where Khalil thought it was supposed to go. Ricky threw it to where only Khalil could get it and that he wouldn't get crushed by a safety. That's an incredible catch. K-Jack from a walk-on to like making plays. And it's crazy because when I talk to players on the record, off the record, for the last 2 years, they were like, dude, Khalil Jackson, he's a player. And I'm like, he's a walk-on. Like, what are we talking about here? And they're like, you don't understand. Khalil Jackson, when he gets his opportunity, he's going to make plays. And I kind of like brushed it off, and he's getting his opportunity now. And that dude just catches footballs.
Nick, the downside of being old is I got to hear you remind me every day that I'm old. The upside is I actually have some decent stories.
You just turn your hearing aids down. You
Well, yeah, I'll never. Getting back to the Chris Doering and the comparison of his play to Ricky Pearsall's, I was on the sideline for Chris Doering's catch. I was right there on the field on the 20-yard line. Either a play or two before, Werfel threw the ball out to the sideline and went past the receiver and basically ball went right into me. But I was there for that play. But Willie Jackson, I kind of grew up with at the Gainesville Boys Club. And I'm only telling this story because if it was in his blood, maybe it's in his son's blood too. 8th grade, I was on Willie Jackson's little youth basketball team. And the first game, Nick, his first game, he catches the ball off a rebound, puts it up, and scores. There was only one problem. It was on the wrong basket. Okay? That was Willie Jackson's first points for my youth basketball team, a basket on the wrong basket. And 5 years later, Willie Jackson starting at guard for the Florida Gators against the great Georgetown Hoyas on CBS. A freaky natural athlete that picked things up fast. And maybe his son's got some of that. Maybe he just needed a chance. Maybe he just needed some experience. But he can catch the ball, and his dad sure could catch the ball too. And in fact, people forget his dad would have caught even more passes, but I believe he was suspended for a game or two over some bogus incident at Gator Growl one year of all places, if my memory's right. So just a fantastic, fantastic family of athletes. And obviously the granddad was one of the first 2 black players in Florida Gators history, Willie Jackson Sr. And then also, you had Terry Jackson as well, who's also related to him, a great running back when Florida won national title. Anyway, let's get to some more questions here. I know, but nobody wants to.
That's just some good lineage right there. That's some good.
Yeah. I mean,
good DNA.
Okay. Gator Nation says Hayden and Arliss aren't freshmen. They redshirted last year, but they are sophomores. Nick, aren't they freshmen?
They're redshirt freshmen.
Yeah.
When you redshirt, you're not a sophomore. You're a redshirt freshman.
Gator Swag says Florida's about to get some good news on the trail. You may have more info than me at this point. LJ McCray is LJ McCray, 5-star defensive end / edge, even, guys. Yeah, Mike Peterson's recruiting him. Okay. Mike Peterson's your edge outside backers coach, and he's personally heavily involved in this. In fact, LJ McCray said last week, he's my lead guy. That's interesting. He's going to announce Saturday. We do not know what time yet. We're trying to work on getting the details there. Florida State, Miami, Auburn, Georgia, all in it in its Final 5. The most buzz is about Florida, Georgia, FSU. Last week, we learned there's some confidence, maybe optimism coming from Auburn too. Nobody really knows what's going on. In this NIL era, it gets a little tricky. We just know that there's been some cautious optimism at Florida for a long time. They feel like they've done, Nick, they feel like at Florida, they've done all they can do.
I want to throw this one on so we can kind of stay on that too.
Sure. Anything to worry about with FSU? Sure. He just visited there officially, not this weekend, but the previous weekend.
And that was his 5th official?
I don't remember how many specifically. I think it is his 5th. I mean, you could take more than 5 these days, but that's his final official. I feel like they think they made some significant progress. They feel like they've always been in it. I want to say he might have a girlfriend that goes to school in Tallahassee. There's optimism at 4 schools right now. And then you have the NIL deal. Well, we've always been told that NIL is probably not the biggest factor for him, but maybe it isn't until it is, right? Maybe it isn't until somebody gives you an NIL situation that you just can't turn down. So, we're going to have to see how that goes. I think Florida will probably, I know they went and saw him earlier this season. I believe you have 2 visits during this time of year, but it's, we're digging. Just bear with us. Make sure you go to, it's a good time to plug something right now. Make sure you hit the like button if you like what we're doing. Hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment. And also, go to GatorsOnline.com right now. $1, get your foot in the door. $1 for 1 month of the best coverage of the Florida Gators team, recruiting, unbelievable message board community, all that stuff. All right, let's get to some more. Here we go. Another one. LJ McCray, all day to Gainesville already. We will see. Chris is saying he signed over his mortgage to land LJ McCray. Interesting. Especially with rates so high. That's it. That's an interesting move. All right, let's see. All right, get some more questions here. But we could start turning our attention to Georgia. Well, I'm looking for questions, Nick. Why don't I just ask you this? I mean, Georgia got some really bad news today. Brock Bowers, their All-American tight end. I mean, we talked about the tight end position earlier, Nick. This guy may be a top 5 player in college football. He may be higher. He may be number. He is a ridiculous stud. God, I don't know how many times the tight end has burned Florida over in Jacksonville either through the years. He's got an ankle deal, high ankle sprain. He's going to have a procedure or had it today, I think. Almost certainly will not be able to play in that game. At least that's the word out of Athens right now. What does this mean? What does this do to this game, Nick?
I mean, that's huge for Florida. And listen, I know I see a lot of people say like, no, I want to beat them at their best. Like, listen, wish him the best. Wish him a nice, long, successful recovery if you're Florida. Brock Bowers is a dude. He's a problem. I told Florida fans last year. I mean, Florida fans knew it just because Amari Burney and Ventrell Miller, as good of linebackers as they were, they could not cover tight ends. And I said, like, hey, Brant Keithy's going to torch you. Brock Bowers is going to torch you. Listen, it's still Georgia. They've still recruited at the level they've recruited. They don't have another Brock Bowers. There isn't another Brock Bowers. But Georgia's good. And the biggest thing with Georgia is they've kind of like sleptwalk through some of their teams, through some of their games. And then everyone was like, hey, Georgia hasn't looked great. Kentucky might give them a chance. And like Georgia was like, oh, shoot, we have to play football. And then just beat the brakes off of Kentucky. I'm going to be interested, if we're talking Georgia, like what's Florida's offensive game plan against Georgia? Because you tried to out Kentucky, and Georgia's a bigger, faster, supremely more talented version of that same Kentucky team that you weren't competitive against.
I got still coughing here, Nick. Let's still coughing. Here's my feeling on this. I mean, you could try to run the ball down Georgia's throat. That used to be the way to beat them. But at this point, I might come out firing it. I might just come out hearing it out because you got to figure Georgia's going to score some points, right? And
I don't think can you beat Georgia, and are you going to beat Georgia in a 20-17 game, or do you go like, hey, if we're going to beat Georgia, it's probably going to have to be like 41-38.
Keep them off balance all game, game, big plays. The defense tired, that kind of stuff. That's what I'm thinking. They may be looking at it like, hey, these two idiots don't know what they're talking about. We're going to win, and we're going to win it by running down their throats. But that's what it seems to me like that would be the way to go. Yeah. There's been some comments here. The defense. There was a comment up above where somebody said Florida. I'm going to grab this one, Nick, and I'm sorry I lost it. It was a very good comment. Let me find it. It was about Florida won Saturday because it controlled the controllables. I had it up there and lost it. That's an excellent point. Didn't shoot itself in the foot that much. It happens here or there. They gave up a key sack on that ended a drive. But it didn't happen much, did it, Nick?
No, I don't know that Cam Jackson's like roughing the passer was roughing the passer. But that one hurt, at a key time. So the biggest thing though was like exactly what you said, controlling the controllables. It's not getting procedural penalties at the biggest, loudest, toughest venue to play that you've played at this year. That was huge for me. Florida was not going to have more penalties and lose a turnover battle and beat South Carolina in the way that they did.
All right, Nick, we got time for just a few more minutes. We're going to keep it to about 45 minutes today. Your biggest concern going into the Georgia game would be what? It's still not a finished product, this Florida team. It's still not a roster that we're used to seeing. But look, you got to give credit where credit's due. That was a significant win the other day. South Carolina had a bad record, Nick, but they lost some games that they were in. They were in that Georgia game, I think, led at half. So it's not a terrible team. Plus, you were going on the road. But what do we know about this Florida team that would give us optimism into the future? To me, it's that everything seems to be evolving. It seems to be progressing on offense. But then again, on the flip side of that, I'm now more concerned about the defense. And isn't it funny how that's changed over the last 4 or 5 weeks? And early in the season, Nick, you're thinking, God, are we ever going to score, as Florida, ever going to score enough points to win a good game, a big game? And now it's kind of like, can Florida stop anybody? So it's kind of changed a little bit. But what reason for optimism moving ahead, Nick?
Moving ahead or in Jacksonville?
Well, moving ahead to Jacksonville, what would be the
I have no optimism that Florida will beat Georgia.
No optimism at all. Okay, well, what about the team in general? What is
think,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is this team learning, growing. The players that are making the biggest impact are young. This is going to be a great experience for Eugene Wilson, for Jordan Castell, Bryce Thornton, Kelby Collins, TJ Searcy. You're going to feel what it's like to be in Jacksonville. You're going to feel what it's like to be a part of this rivalry. I mean, we have the leaked audio of Kirby from a couple years ago where he says, I want to break them. Like, that's the mentality of a Florida-Georgia game. The Florida-Georgia, Brandon Spikes laying on top of Noshawn Moreno, saying things that would get us kicked off of YouTube. That's what the Florida-Georgia game is. So while I don't think Florida will win in 2 weeks, you're going to have a chance to in 24. You're going to have a chance to in 25. And I think you need to get these guys their feet wet in this rivalry. You figured out how to win a big game against Tennessee. You figured out how to win on the road last week in Columbia. Now you're going to feel what I think is probably the most heated rivalry currently between Florida and Georgia.
Yeah, Nick, here's the issue with this Georgia game. It's that when you look at the line of scrimmage for both teams, I mean, that's where the difference is, right? And it doesn't mean Florida can't pull something out here, but that's where the difference is. Now, saying that, a year ago and the year before, Georgia needed 3-4 guys and could get to the quarterback. It's been harder for them to get to the quarterback. Now they're having to bring pressure and be more creative. Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann, they're having to kind of do some different things to get back there. Now they're still very good. And the thing that they do best, besides being so good at the line of scrimmage, is the gang tackling on the Georgia defense. You catch a ball in the flat. Oh my God. It's unbelievable. And that's really where you hope Florida is in a year or two and not quite there. You don't have missed tackles. And when you do, there's 3 guys waiting there to clobber the guy. That's what Georgia does defensively, but not at the level it had been the last few years. So we're going to see there. Now, Nick, historically, this was a series where in the 70s and 80s, the underdog won a lot of games that maybe they shouldn't have won, starting with 1985 when Florida was number 1 in the country and Georgia just blew the doors off of them. So we don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, but on paper, it's not super encouraging. Obviously, Brock Bowers not playing, though. If he doesn't play, that's not insignificant, obviously. And
it's not. You're losing one of, like we said, both you and I both agree, not only probably the best tight end, but one of the best 5 players in the country. But you hit the nail on the head. It's a line of scrimmage game. Florida's just not there. Like, Georgia has been recruiting and developing these lines. Like, last year they were doing like hockey line shifts. They would just pull 4 guys out and bring 4 other 5-stars in. Like, I think Florida will have a tough time stopping Georgia from running the ball. I think Florida will have a tough time running the ball against Georgia. It's a line of scrimmage game. Florida is at a disadvantage on both offensive and defensive lines.
All right, let's see here. Get to some more comments. I'm trying to figure out if there's any real questions here. Nick, before we, get into the next stuff on the game, what do you and Zach do this week? It's kind of a time for the team to relax and unwind. You still got to write, obviously. So what do you do and what are you working on? We can promote your work here. What do we got coming down the pipe?
Yeah, I think I was writing something and then we changed course around 1:00 today. But I'm going to be doing hey, let's do a deeper dive into these PFF numbers. Let's look at Graham Mertz and where has he been successful? And that's only 6 games. Like, we saw a completely different game plan at South Carolina. Is that because South Carolina has a terrible secondary? Maybe. Or is that, hey, we're seeing something from Graham and we can extend this playbook and we can start pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. Who's been impressed me? Who's surprised me this year? I think you'll know one. Graham Mertz is certainly going to be on that list. But a lot of taking stock of what have we seen? What does it mean? And what does it mean going forward? So a lot of that stuff and catching up on some sleep, I think, hopefully, maybe.
Nick, how big of a win was that for Billy Napier? I mean, going into the season, you don't look at the South Carolina game. I'm sorry, all due respect to them, but you don't look at that game and think, God, that's a big game. But then it comes up and it becomes significant. they needed to win on the road. They needed to kind of get the momentum going back, especially with when you look what's coming ahead. Georgia, Arkansas at home. Arkansas's got 2 wins, nearly beat Alabama last week. LSU on the road, not as good as people thought, still very good, still on the road. Missouri, better than people thought, on the road. FSU, as good as people thought, but at home. There's no gimme left. But that was still significant for Billy Napier and company.
Kind of going back to what I started with, like, I think it's just big to learn how to handle that adversity. I don't know that you can understate that. It's kind of an intangible, but I think that's huge for this team. I don't think, like, I think you beat a bad, like, South Carolina's 2-3. Yes, they lost to, I think, like, Kentucky, North Carolina to start the year, and Georgia. Like, they lost to 3 top 25 teams. But looking at that South Carolina team, like, that's a really bad secondary. The offensive line's a mess. But their offensive line, and here's something that's interesting that I'll try to dig into this week. South Carolina's offensive line was terrible. They moved guys all over the place. I think the center was playing like right tackle. They moved guys all over the place. And now I wonder, like, Austin Barber's been okay, but hasn't performed as well as we thought. Damian George has been struggling at right tackle. Micah Mazuka's not playing as well. Does Florida now in the bye week say, hey, can we make some moves and change things on the offensive line? It's not like you have a bunch of continuity with the same starting 5 playing in every game. So I wonder if Florida, when you go into a bye week, it's all about self-assessment, looking at us, how do we fix us? So I wonder if Florida will make some changes on the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line, again, we haven't even talked about them on those last few drives. I don't know how to say this. You weren't thinking about them. That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like you weren't like, oh, dear God, not that guy again. Or another penalty. That didn't happen. They just blocked. And look what the offense did when they blocked. It was interesting. Let's see. Here's a question from Patrick. Nick, do you think the recent improvements to the offense and special teams will cause Billy to not make any new hires? I mean, obviously it's a long season. What can you tell us right now? What are your just general thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think that changed anything. I would expect Florida to get a play caller. Whether that's Rob Sale stays and it's co-OC. But I would expect Florida to get a play caller, and I would expect to get an on-field dedicated special teams coach, you got to fire somebody. You don't have a spot on the coaching staff for an on-field coach. So you have to get rid of somebody to then create that. Or maybe you definitely, I was going to say the offensive coordinator, whoever you bring in to be the, co-OC, OC, play caller, can do special teams. That's stupid. That's one of my dumber thoughts. But
yeah,
like I think they will make a change there as well. I don't think the recent success changed any of that.
Tawan's been putting up some points here, or making some points that Georgia didn't stop Auburn's running game. Vanderbilt scored 20 with their 3rd string running back. Couple things. Georgia struggled at Auburn. If you follow that place, I did, obviously. It's a tough place to play. And Gus Malzahn beat Alabama 3 times there. They might have been better one of the 3 games, okay? Vanderbilt, you're never up. Yeah, Georgia, you can't be up every week, right? You just can't. You can't. But what we know about this Georgia team, Nick, is they ain't lost an SEC game in a while. All right? They haven't lost an SEC game in a while, man.
They haven't lost a game in a while.
Now, they got to lose. It's going to happen sooner or later. Might as well be Florida, right? But they seem to step up when they need to. It reminds me of some of the LSU teams that won national titles that, God, man, it didn't look so good against, Northwestern State, but then all of a sudden against, Tennessee wins by 3 touchdowns. Some teams just know when to focus, and it looks like they have the ability to turn that switch on. Played horribly against Auburn, but got the long drive when it counted. Of course, the star of that drive was Brock Bowers. So we will see. Let's see.
And then the other thing too, like, listen, Tawan, I'm just giving you my opinion, and I'm a reporter, and it's kind of like an unbiased. I kind of just try to stay middle of the road, but I'm always here. I'm always here. So when if Florida goes out and beats Georgia, I'll be right here reading your comments, and I'll own up to that. But like, if you're a fan, why would you want to go into the game being like, we have no chance? Like, if you're a fan, be a fan. Like, hey, we're going to go in and beat the brakes off Georgia. Cool. But like, I'm not going to write that.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. I have no expectation of beating Georgia. I just want to be competitive and leave Jacksonville healthy. Go in hoping for the best. Hope for the best. There's nothing wrong with that. Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, we always say, right? So, look, I mean, they're in a better place right now than we thought they'd be after Kentucky blew the doors off them. We didn't know, well, Nick did, but we didn't know what they were going to do against Vanderbilt. Struggled for a quarter, looked good for the last 2.5 quarters, and then kind of got that close, hard fought comeback win at South Carolina. The team's feeling good about themselves. They're going to get healthy over these next 10, 13, 10, 11 days before the Georgia game. Anything's possible. Again, it's been a crazy series historically. But yeah, if you say, look, you got to put money on the game, who are you going to put it on? It's you start looking at what would be the reasons.
Give me your money and I'll put it on Florida.
Yeah, what would be the reasons to give you optimism? Well, I don't think there's a ton of optimism, but hope. Yes, the team's coming together. New playmakers are emerging. The offensive line seems to be gelling and playing better. The offense now has some diversity. You've identified playmakers that can get the ball in the end zone. Your defense is capable of making big plays at big moments. The special teams have greatly improved. You've got a very good kicker. You've got a very good punter. So it's not like they don't have things it's not like they don't have things working in their favor. It's a tall task. I'm going to get to one recruiting question, Nick, and then we'll get going. Nick and Keith, what have you heard? Anything new on Amaris Williams? That's Florida's edge commit with Ohio State, or Nasir Johnson flipping to Georgia. I mean, look, those guys are still committed to Florida. Florida's having to battle teams. You're having to hold off people. That's just the way it goes. Whether you're winning or losing, Florida could be 7-0 right now, and it wouldn't matter. They'd still be having to fend off people for these guys. When you recruit high-level players, that's just the way it is. But to answer your question, there is nothing new. Ohio State's defensive line coach is a North Carolina native. That's an appealing program. He's going to give them a look. There's no question about it. Remember, when he committed to Florida, that was a big surprise to Penn State, which thought he was about to commit to Penn State. Well, that makes you think that this could just be one of those guys that everywhere he goes, he has that sugar high. He did visit Florida within the last month, and he said he felt good about his commitment. A 75% chance he said that he would not visit other schools. We will see. I think he probably will. I think a lot of these guys will. Nasir Johnson just visited Georgia in the last couple of weeks. Georgia's trying to make a big move with Florida's defensive line commit, one true defensive line commit. I don't think anything is done, let's put it that way, but Georgia heavily in the mix. Also, I need to point out FSU never stopped recruiting him either. That's just the way it goes. Those are the battles. I can't tell you that a guy's going to flip or not flip right now. I never, Nick, say a guy's 100% because you just don't know. Things change. You know what I mean?
And with the transfer portal, even when you're there as a freshman, not 100%.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. All right. Well, Nick, that will do it for this edition of Talking Gators. We appreciate everybody stopping by. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Always, we love your comments. We wanted to really dig deep into this 41-39 win at South Carolina. Nick and Zach were up there in Columbia. Hey, by the way, before I let you go, what was you were down there. What was the kind of I saw the dancing video of the team partying and all that stuff. What was just kind of the general vibe? I mean, was it relief or was it true? You know what I mean? Where you're just so excited. What was the team like?
It was wild. So I walked down to the field towards the end of the game. I'm standing in the tunnel, and the tunnel Florida has to walk through is right by the student section. There was still some, like, I'm guessing drunk, shirtless, frat boy, South Carolina fans, like up against the fence, yelling and talking smack to Florida as they walked off the field. And to hear, if you're down on the field or if you're by a bench on the road, by Florida's bench on the road, the stuff people feel comfortable saying to these young men who are in the prime of their life, 6'5", 6'4", 6'8", 375 pounds. The stuff people are telling Cam Waits, I'm like, my guy, if you were down here on the grass, you would not be saying any of this to him. So I think Florida, the entire game, had belief. And I'm not going to say they quit at Kentucky or they quit at Utah, but they had belief. Even down 10 in the fourth, they had belief. And down 10 in the fourth, the entire stadium is Gator chomping at them. and they gave it right back to them. So I'm seeing this team develop some moxie, and I like to see that.
Yeah, interesting stuff. All right, Nick Della Torre. For Nick, I'm Keith Niebuhr. We're both with Gators Online. We appreciate everybody stopping by. We'll do it again soon. Everybody enjoy your off week. Be safe. Enjoy that last win, and get ready for the cocktail party. It's something, man. There ain't nothing in the world like that. Everybody take care. Thanks for stopping by.